Michael Harrison started his shift at St. Mary's Hospital parking garage precisely at 7:00 a.m. At 45 of average height and with graying hair thinning at the temples. He was the type of man who disappeared into a crowd effortlessly. For 20 years, he had performed the same duties, guiding cars to open spaces, collecting exit fees, keeping order amid the constant chaos of a busy urban hospital. To most people, he was simply Mike, the parking guy. Few suspected that his name carried the weight of a past life, one far more dangerous than his current routine suggested. That morning felt like any other. His coffee sat cold in the small booth, eyes half-lidded from the early start. The morning rush was in full swing. Doctors hurried in from commutes, nurses walked from the L station, and anxious families arrived for visiting hours. Yet despite 2 decades of civilian life, something never truly switched off within him. Mike's mind scanned constantly, cataloging subtle threats invisible to ordinary people. The first anomaly appeared at 8:30 a.m. A white panel van eased into a far corner of the parking structure, deliberately avoiding convenient spaces near the hospital entrance. Its driver did not exit immediately, an unusual choice for someone visiting a patient. Mike initially shrugged it off. Sometimes family members lingered in their cars, gathering courage. Yet as an hour passed, the vehicle remained stationary, engine cold, no one in sight. Something about its placement triggered Mike's attention. The van was parked dangerously close to the exit ramp, as though planning a swift departure. Most visitors chose spots near the hospital entrance to reduce walking distance, particularly those handling medical equipment or elderly relatives. This vehicle had done the exact opposite, taking the most tactically advantageous position for a rapid getaway. During lunch, Mike returned to his booth and switched on a portable radio. The usual midday news trickled through politics, finance, sports. Then a bulletin sliced through the monotony. The announcer's voice carried a sharp edge, the controlled urgency of someone delivering serious intelligence. Mike recognized the tone immediately. It was the same cadence used in crisis reports he had learned to decode long ago. Federal authorities have raised the terror threat level in the Chicago metropolitan area following intelligence reports of potential explosive device activity. Law enforcement agencies are conducting heightened security sweeps in high-traffic public areas, the announcer said. Mike froze, coffee halfway to his lips, his mind already racing beyond the broadcast. The words barely registered. His brain had shifted into a tactical mode long suppressed. For 20 years, he had avoided scenarios like this, burying memories of specialized training beneath the facade of an ordinary life. Now, surrounded by hundreds of innocent people, his instincts reawakened with deadly precision. He began scanning vehicles methodically, parking patterns, suspicious packages, cables where they shouldn't be, cars too pristine for their apparent age, engines that sounded mismatched to the chassis. Each anomaly triggered subtle responses, a symphony of muscle memory and threat assessment buried deep in his nervous system. His gaze settled on the white van in the far corner. From every angle, it now screamed abnormality. Its position was too deliberate, the windows too dark for a service vehicle, and the license plate's reflective quality suggested a recent replacement. Most alarming was the antenna array non-standard, highly specialized. A pattern Mike had seen before, not in civilian use, but in vehicles configured for operations where stealth and rapid extraction mattered. During his afternoon rounds, Mike approached the van at a casual pace, keeping his presence discreet. Through his peripheral vision, he noted more subtle warnings. The suspension sagging under a load heavier than a typical van, faint modification marks around the rear door handles, and, most unnerving of all, a soft electrical hum emanating from inside despite the engine being off. The exterior told a story of meticulous use. Though clean and polished, the van bore subtle signs of intensive activity. Tire treads unusual for normal urban driving. Tiny scratches near the locks, suggesting multiple key operators. None of it matched the wear of a family vehicle. or standard delivery truck. Every detail added weight to the growing suspicion gnawing at Mike's trained instincts. As he lingered, eyes locked on the van, his pulse quickened. He knew he was observing more than a vehicle. He was witnessing a potential threat quietly unfolding in plain sight. Every sense heightened, every nerve attuned to anomalies, invisible to everyone else. And yet, outwardly, he remained the invisible parking attendant, nodding politely at passing doctors, guiding cars with routine gestures. To anyone else, the day proceeded normally. But Mike Harrison knew better history, had taught him that ordinary appearances could conceal extraordinary danger. If you're following this story, stay with us, because Michael's past is about to collide violently with the present, revealing secrets that will shock both him and the city he quietly protects. Mike turned off the radio and exhaled slowly, trying to steady hands that trembled ever so slightly. In his EOD days, that reaction would have been non-existent. 2 decades of civilian life had dulled his reflexes, but they had not erased them. Memories began surfacing like shards of steel years at Fort Campbell, meticulously trained in explosive ordnance disposal, where a single misstep could mean death. Back then, he had been Staff Sergeant Michael Harrison, an expert in disarming deadly devices. Now, he was Mike, the parking guy, blending into the monotony of downtown Chicago. Stepping from his booth, he scrutinized the white van again. It was almost unnaturally clean, no mud, no wear on the tires. Paint pristine as if untouched by the city streets. Yet a subtle dent marred the rear bumper, evidence of contact with something heavy. That small imperfection told him more than most people would notice. The vehicle had been loaded and unloaded frequently, operational in ways ordinary vehicles never were. The van's placement gnawed at him. No average hospital visitor would choose a corner so close to the exit ramp. People normally aimed for convenience near the main doors, especially when assisting elderly patients or transporting delicate equipment. This vehicle had been positioned for the fastest departure, a deliberate tactical choice, characteristic of someone trained in operations, someone who always planned an escape route. Mike's steps were slow, deliberate, each one waking dormant instincts. As he approached, his mind automatically mapped exits, cover points, and potential casualty zones. The elderly woman on the bench, a doctor stepping from the emergency entrance, ambulance personnel adjusting their equipment, everybody became part of a dynamic battlefield assessment. When he closed within 10 meters of the van, his senses detected it. A faint electrical vibration, imperceptible to anyone without experience. The engine was cold, yet the hum was alive, a possible indicator of active circuitry or timing mechanisms. A chill ran down his spine. He had seen this before. He reached for his cell phone, only to find zero signal. Unusual for downtown Chicago, especially here where emergency coverage was robust. The radio was dead too. A blackout. This precise indicated intentional jamming, advanced and deliberate. Someone had prepared for communication disruption. Cautiously, Mike retreated behind a concrete support pillar, maintaining the casual stance of a parking attendant. Internally, he switched to full operational mode. How could he alert security without radios, phones, or risking proximity to a potentially live device? Every second counted. A critical memory surfaced. Remote-triggered explosives often relied on cell signals. Was this blackout a protective measure to prevent premature activation, or a calculated part of the detonation sequence? Understanding that could decide who lived and who died. From his concealed vantage, 30 meters away, Mike studied the van. It was inside his minimum safe observation radius, but still within reach to react if necessary. The hospital building was 70 meters away, a distance that offered no guarantee if the device was armed. He battled internal conflict. Part of him screamed to leave. Family at home, a quiet life carefully built over 20 years. Yet the other voice, the one shaped by training, discipline, and oath, reminded him that the hundreds inside this building had just become his responsibility. Focusing on the windshield, He noticed a glint behind the sun visor. It wasn't part of the antenna. Metallic, deliberate, it looked like a command receiver. The device might not be active yet, but timing and trigger mechanisms were unknown. Any miscalculation could be catastrophic. An ambulance roared past the emergency bay, sirens blaring. A terrifying thought crossed Mike's mind. Could its electromagnetic signals detonate the device accidentally? He had studied scenarios where ordinary communications frequencies had triggered explosions. His pulse quickened. He held his breath as the vehicle passed. Nothing. The threat remained, but the immediate danger from the ambulance had not been triggered. Then, movement in a black sedan caught his trained eye. The occupant, sitting 50 meters away, had been pretending to read a newspaper for the past hour. That act of surveillance was obvious to Mike. The person was likely the operator responsible for detonation. The occupant lifted the paper, and their eyes met Mike's for a brief, loaded second. Recognition, calculated retreat, coordination. The presence of multiple operational elements was confirmed. This was no ordinary threat. It was a meticulously executed plan. Mike exhaled quietly, forcing his expression to remain neutral. Inside, every instinct, every memory, every protocol surged to life. He had no way to communicate, no direct support, yet leaving was not an option. Hundreds of lives depended on his next moves. The quiet parking attendant was gone. Staff Sergeant Michael Harrison had returned. Stay with this story, because Mike's next moves will determine not only his fate, but the safety of everyone in the hospital. Hit like and follow closely, because the tension is about to escalate beyond anything you've imagined. Mike stayed pressed against the concrete pillar, his body tense but controlled. As decades of EOD training resurfaced piece by piece, the standard procedures flashed in his mind. Secure the perimeter, evacuate civilians, wait for specialized teams, but there were no specialists nearby. Evacuation was incomplete, and hesitation could be deadly. Risk was now the only viable option. He scanned the parking garage again. 50 meters away, the black sedan remained stationary, its occupant feigning disinterest behind a newspaper while subtly monitoring the van. Every glance was calculated, confirming Mike's suspicions. This was a coordinated operation. His pulse quickened. One operative, yes, but likely more vehicles, more layers of planning. 15 cars were scattered across the garage, which were innocent and which were part of a malicious plan. Without intelligence, he couldn't tell, and the clock was merciless. It was 2:45 p.m., the height of visiting hours. Families were arriving, children tugging at anxious parents' hands, elderly visitors navigating with walkers and wheelchairs. Over 100 people now moved unknowingly within a potential blast radius. Each second weighed heavier on Mike's conscience. A faint, mechanical clicking emanated from the rear of the van. He froze, straining to pinpoint its source. It was not a passing engine or normal vehicle noise. The sound was precise, electronic, a timing mechanism, or a warning signal. In older devices, audible timers were common. In modern explosives, they signaled arming sequences or countdown initiation. Mike faced an impossible choice. He could retreat, wait, and hope authorities arrived in time. No one would blame him. He was no longer an active EOD specialist. But abandoning the responsibility was not an option. Hundreds of lives rested on his judgment. He exhaled, pushed forward, each step deliberate. Approach angles, safe distances, reconnaissance protocols, all the discipline ingrained over years in Fort Campbell guided him instinctively. Every calculation, every observation became second nature again. 10 meters from the van, Mike paused. The electrical hum inside had intensified. Through a slightly open window, a faint red LED blinked rhythmically. His training recognized it instantly. An active device, operational and dangerous. Sweat coated his palms. Adrenaline surged through his veins, reminiscent of deployments decades ago. But now there was no backup team, No evacuation support. No radio communication. Only his expertise stood between disaster and safety. Testing the van's doors yielded nothing. They were locked. The side window allowed him to hear more clearly. Two distinct sounds, a steady digital click, signaling a countdown, and a low-frequency hum, indicating continuous power. His assessment was clear. The van contained a live explosive system, likely in the cargo area. Mike began a careful circuit around the van, blending casual posture with tactical observation. He noticed a thin cable exiting beneath the rear door, insulated in a way inconsistent with standard automotive, wiring another indicator of detonation equipment. He mentally mapped potential blast radius. The van's size and probable payload suggested a 50-meter danger zone. The hospital, 70 meters away, contained critical patients who couldn't be moved quickly. The stakes were immense. The black sedan's occupant lowered the newspaper, locking eyes with Mike for a tense, loaded second. Recognition. Coordination. His military intuition screamed. The operation was entering its final phase. A realization hit with chilling clarity. The visible timing mechanism might not be the primary trigger. Detonation could come via radio signals, cellular commands, or even online communication. Cutting internal wires might not suffice. Another ambulance approached the emergency entrance, siren silent, but moving with urgency. Mike's stomach tightened. Could its onboard electronics trigger the device? Or worse, could it be an orchestrated element of the plan? His mind cataloged every possibility. The ambulance stopped. Two paramedics emerged with a stretcher. Their movements seemed normal, but normal no longer existed. Every person, every vehicle, was a potential threat. One paramedic glanced toward the van, then checked his watch. Coincidence? Possibly. But Mike's instincts flagged the action's suspicious timing and coordinated behavior. Heart hammering, he exhaled slowly, calculating his next move. Retreat wasn't an option. Observation was not enough. Every decision now carried weight that extended beyond himself. Hundreds of innocent lives depended on precision, courage, and speed. Mike's hands tightened into fists. His mind sharpened. Every sensory detail mattered. Vibrations, lights, reflections, angles, distances. The quiet parking attendant had disappeared. Staff Sergeant Michael Harrison was back, operating under extreme pressure. This was the calm before a storm that would demand every ounce of his skill. One wrong step could end in catastrophe. Yet, leaving the situation unchecked was unimaginable. The van, the sedan, the timing, the hidden signals, all converged into a single fact. He had no choice but to act. Focus on this story, and don't forget to subscribe, because Mike's next move will determine whether hundreds live or die. Mike had stopped thinking like a civilian. Every layer of his ordinary parking attendant persona had vanished, replaced by Staff Sergeant Michael Harrison, EOD Specialist. 20 years of dormant training surged back with startling clarity. His steps became precise, his hands steadied, and his heart found the rhythm it had known during active deployment. He focused on the van's rear cargo area, examining the exposed cable. The yellow-striped black insulation was unmistakable military-grade detonation wire. Not amateur, not improvised. The payload could be 10 kilograms or more, enough to devastate several city blocks if executed correctly. At the hospital entrance, the ambulance had completed its unloading. Two paramedics wheeled a stretcher toward the emergency department, moving routinely, but Mike could no longer afford the luxury of assuming normalcy. His eyes flicked toward the black sedan. Its occupant was still seated, watching, checking his watch at precise intervals. The correlation of movements indicated coordination, and the operation's timing was advancing toward execution. Mike checked his cell phone, still no signal. But he had a backup plan. St. Mary's was equipped with an emergency fire alarm system, capable of triggering a full-scale evacuation. He knew the nearest pull station was 30 meters away, Mounted on the hospital's exterior wall, he began a careful tactical withdrawal, walking slowly to avoid drawing attention. Every movement maintained the illusion of routine security patrol. While he internally charted the operational sequence, the black sedan's occupant followed, subtly, but persistently. Mike remained calm, calculating angles, distances, and potential interception strategies. Reaching the hospital wall, he located the red emergency alarm box. Breaking it would trigger evacuation but also signal the bomb operator that someone had discovered the threat. Risk assessment flashed through his mind. Delay could allow detonation. Action could provoke immediate activation. Timing was critical. An elderly woman rose from a nearby bench, moving toward the parking garage exit, directly past the van. Mike's stomach clenched. Proximity sensors could be triggered by such movement. He intercepted her, gently taking her arm and redirecting her toward the hospital's main entrance. She seemed confused, but compliant. In that moment, the surveillance operative stepped from the black sedan, abandoning concealment. The mission's timeline had accelerated. Mike guided the woman to safety, reassessing the evolving threat. The operative was mobile, and detonation appeared imminent. The fire alarm remained his primary tool for mass evacuation. Mike returned to the alarm box. The operative approached the van, speaking rapidly into a cell phone, likely issuing commands or receiving final authorization. Time was running out. Mike inhaled deeply, remembering his oath. Defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath had no expiration. With a precise motion, Mike smashed the glass of the alarm box with his elbow. Sirens blared, automated evacuation announcements echoed, and the hospital came alive with controlled chaos. Staff implemented emergency protocols immediately. Doctors in doorways, nurses wheeling patients, security directing traffic. But Mike knew minutes might not be enough. The bomb operative reacted instantly, running toward the van. Concealment was no longer a priority. Immediate detonation was now the goal. Mike had perhaps 60 seconds to act. He grabbed a piece of construction rebar from a nearby worksite and sprinted, closing the distance as fast as middle-aged legs could carry him. The operative glanced up, recognition dawning too late. Mike swung the rebar with precise force. The man collapsed, unconscious. Without hesitation, Mike seized the operative's phone. The screen displayed a bomb control application. 347, 346, 345. Password protected and encrypted beyond his technical abilities, he pocketed it. The evacuation progressed efficiently, but 3 minutes remained insufficient to clear the potential blast radius. Mike turned to the van. Using the rebar, he forced the rear door open. His eyes widened. Inside was a military-style duffel bag, wires protruding from multiple access points. A digital display blinked red numbers. 2, 30, 1, 2, 30, 2, 29. He faced a sophisticated, live, explosive device. Every instinct, every ounce of his 20-year EOD training now collided with adrenaline-fueled urgency. This was the ultimate test, the culmination of his dormant expertise against a meticulously planned threat. Mike's mind raced, recalculating variables, assessing risks, and prioritizing actions. He knew a single error could cost hundreds of lives. Every second mattered. Every breath, every heartbeat, carried the weight of responsibility he hadn't felt since leaving the military. The hospital echoed with alarms and shouted instructions, a chaotic symphony that masked the quiet, ticking menace in the van. Mike's focus narrowed. He was no longer a parking garage attendant. He was the last line of defense between life and annihilation. If you're watching this unfold, hit the subscribe button now, because Mike's next move will decide the fate of everyone in St. Mary's Hospital. Staring at the bomb, Mike felt the last 20 years of civilian life evaporate as his EOD training seized full control. The digital countdown was merciless. 2, 18, 2, 17, 2, 16. A complex web of colored wires challenged even an active bomb disposal expert. Red, blue, yellow, green, each color indicated a separate circuit, and a single misstep could trigger immediate detonation. Muscle memory resurfaced, recalling the principles drilled into him at Fort Campbell. Typically, the main power cable was red, but experienced bomb makers often included decoys. The detonator wire might be yellow or green, depending on the device's design. Mike's hands trembled as indecision threatened to become fatal. Through the garage windows, the hospital evacuation was underway. Medical staff wheeled patients on gurneys. Nurses assisted the elderly, and security coordinated traffic. Every movement around him was vital, and the responsibility rested solely on Mike's shoulders. Countdown. 1, 50, 2, 1, 50, 1, 50. Mike pulled out his Swiss Army knife, gripping the small blade tightly. He had to decide which wire to cut, and quickly. His EOD training advised severing the main power when unsure. But which was the main power cable? Closer inspection revealed that the red wire was thicker than the others, a potential indicator of primary power. Yet the yellow wire ran straight toward a mechanism resembling the detonator. Mike faced a choice between two equally deadly options. Countdown. 1, 25, 1, 24, 1, 23. Less than 90 seconds remained. He exhaled sharply, trusting instincts honed by decades of rigorous training. His knife moved toward the red wire. A faint chiming noise from inside the casing startled him. This was not part of the countdown, a separate signal, possibly a remote trigger. The device had multiple activation pathways, and the timer was only one of them. Mike forced himself to remain calm. Searching the lower section, he spotted a small metal housing with a blinking LED. This was the secondary detonator, independent of the main timer. Countdown. 0, 50, 8, 0, 50, 7, 0, 50, 6. Time had become his enemy. He cut the red wire first. The main display went dark, but the backup LED persisted. Another mechanism remained. He pried the metal housing open with the rebar, revealing a second miniature countdown. 0, 31, 0, 30, 0, 29. Only two wires, black and white, remained. One powered the system, the other transmitted the detonation signal. He had no time for testing. Countdown. 0, 15, 0, 14, 0, 13. Mike closed his eyes and severed the white wire. Silence followed instantly. The LED extinguished, the electronic hum ceased, and the countdown vanished. For a moment, he simply held his breath. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. No explosion. He opened his eyes cautiously. The bomb was disarmed. After a 20-year hiatus, his dormant EOD skills had saved hundreds of lives. Police sirens filled the area. Emergency responders arrived. The bomb squad began examining the van. Specialists marveled at the professional disarmament, but could not identify the individual responsible. Mike retreated to his booth, resuming his civilian guise. No one had witnessed his actions.